very special because it's the first non-Ontarian place I've been since starting this Discover Canada series, whatever. To explain, this Discovering Canada initiative that I started was because I realized all I ever knew was Toronto and the whole of Canada, which is crazy. And I've been traveling in Ontario recently, as you can see from my channel, but this is the first time I've left Ontario on my own, actually at all in general, even for me being here myself. So already I see it in a beautiful light because it's the start of a great journey. So as I said in Toronto, when I said welcome to Toronto, welcome to Montreal. Today I want to talk about Airbnb experiences in relation to understanding Montreal. I have 2 experiences lined up for this video, for this day. And before I get into detail about that, here's the first problem we're running into, which is not being able to text our host and not having data to find them. So I wrote down the instructions on how to get to the next 2 places in a book. So I guess where the book is, it's all the way back at the hotel. And I'm trying to see if I can gung-ho and go ahead, but I don't have Wi-Fi. I just realized that I actually know how to get to the second location, which is the French class thing. I just don't know how to get to the first one. So I'm not going back to the hostel. I'm just going to figure it out because I'm really early anyways, and this is an excuse to give me a walking tour of my own. So I was acting like I got a revelation from God to turn right, and then I was about to, but so I decided to keep going straight because there was construction on that street, but look what I went. I learned afterwards that Montreal and Quebec, I believe, has a lot of free public Wi-Fi. I think it's called the Zap Village. And I found that there were places with free Wi-Fi, but not when I needed them. Alternatively, I learned that you can also just download your Google Maps offline, so it's available for you. I didn't know this before. This is, I guess, you learn as you go along. So you can hear these bells ringing. It's 12 o'clock right now, and they're ringing all around. You can hear it echoing everywhere. So the tour hasn't even begun. I'm just showing myself around. I'm not even in the right place where I'm supposed to meet them. But already you can hear bells ringing, and in front of me there's like a ship. And down there I can see like the European-esque style. I haven't gone in there yet. I'm just on the outskirts by the St. Lawrence River. And it's so beautiful. Sometimes I wonder what's the point of taking a tour, because I can easily just show myself around. You see, I'm already in Old Montreal. I can see all these buildings, and then I realize I don't know anything beyond what I'm looking at. And sure, it's beautiful, but what about it? The funny thing is that in the beginning I was afraid of walking around because it would ruin my experience of the tour, but it really did not take away from the tour, because the tour gives you a much more in-depth, more than what you can see, or more than what I can see. And that's why people use guidebooks or tours and stuff. Speaking of tour, I have found my way and we are here. If you're wondering how I did it, I found an old looking street like this with a restaurant, stood outside of it, and in this case it was a steakhouse, connected to the Wi-Fi, and found out I was pretty close to where I was supposed to be, and I screenshotted the directions to the place, because of course I didn't know you could just download the map, and then I was there. Anyway, back to the tour and learning about Old Montreal, which was the whole point of today.
France to start Montreal, and it was started as a Catholic religious mission. They wanted to convert the indigenous First Nations to Catholicism. That was the whole point of them coming over here, these French people. So
every time I travel, the thing that I feel the most is discomfort, and that's completely normal to feel when you're traveling. It's not so much culture shock for me. And one of the things that helps me to overcome this feeling is by interacting with people. It really helps to know the history of the place that you're in. Because one of the things that makes a place uncomfortable is that it's unknown. So making it known to you will help you understand the place. Like, for example, did you know in this church, the stained glasses I hear are depicting histories of Montreal and not religion. It's only the morning for me, and already I'm starting to see depiction of Quebec pride and this nationalism, and I'm trying to understand why that's the case. Everything in here is so warm and detailed that you can't help but just stare and look and wonder at how amazing it's been designed. And although I'm visibly not Catholic, I try to be respectful of the area. But yet one thing stood out to me. There's not actually a lot of people here worshiping. Unfortunately, my time here is up, and although I have yet more to see, we gotta go.
Talking about politics, 1960s we started to have this movement here in Quebec province of what I refer to as Quebec nationalism. The English had kind of taken over, dominated, and the French people had had enough by the time the 60s had rolled around of being pretty much second-class citizens. So there was this movement that came along to try and bring back some pride to the French people.
There used to be tension between the French and the English, and now today it's mostly language-wise. To demonstrate this, here's an interesting statue of a woman, a French woman wearing this French branded clothing line and a French dog. She's snuffing her nose at this English building. On the opposite, here's this English man with this English branded clothing with an English pug. He's snuffing his nose at this French building. So what you notice is that they're both facing different directions. But look at their dogs, they're facing each other and they just want to play. And I feel like that is what summarizes the gist of it, at least from my limited experience. There's not much, for me, I don't see huge tension, but you do see like people are trying to work together. So I'm not trying to ruin this particular experience for you, and I don't think it's possible for me to do so anyway because it was a 3-hour tour. I'll tell you this, the city did feel like it opened up a little bit more. It made just a little bit more sense to me being able to connect places with a story, with its history. And now I think I really understand, or at least the gist of it, why Quebec compared to Ontario is just a little bit more proud of their roots or their heritage. Already my day feels like complete, like I did so many things, but it's far from done. In fact, we have somewhere else to go. But first, prayers. This is a mosque I found pretty close to the area. Very convenient for you to stop by because if you're Muslim, you want to keep continuing your prayers even when you're traveling. So you would think that everything's done for the day, but there's one more thing left to do. I just couldn't say it earlier because I had to go pray. There's a mosque. So I'm trying to find a station. I hopped on a random bus on the main street because I thought that if it's like Toronto, then it's most likely going to stop by a station. And one stop later, found a station. The bus driver probably thinks I'm so lazy that I couldn't walk 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Transportation is one of the things that scares me when I'm traveling to a new place because I feel like you can only start to figure it out once you're there, but you don't want to look awkward. Luckily, it was very easy for me to navigate this system because there was no English. Finally, I was lost. I just realized that I actually know how to get to the second location, which is the French class thing. It is so important to have written down how you're gonna get to your places, or at least have Google Maps downloaded offline or something like data, you know? Don't just assume you know the address so you can find the place. What if I told you that to learn Quebec swear words was to give you a little bit of an insight to its past? Earlier, I called this a language class because that's what I thought I was getting myself into, and that's my fault for not reading it. But what I got was much better than my expectations. We learned more about the Quiet Revolution and how there were new language laws introduced to Quebec because English was taking over and they did not want to lose their French. Makes sense, right? The other thing we learned was the decline in the church, or more people were distancing themselves from the church, and that's where the swear words come in. Using religious-oriented vocabulary in vain was acutely considered a sin, and so at the time people would change the word to be close to the bad word, or I guess the sin word, which is to say this one for no reason, but instead they would say that, and over time that actually became the swear word. So you can see the list here, all these words: Christ, damned, baptism. I'm reading the English, but these are really bad, and I was confused, like, how can this be bad? Because to me, I asked her, it's like me shouting Brighter Matt, and she put it this way: think of it like this: anything that you make off limits, or anything that you give value to, I guess. If you were told don't say this when you're younger, suddenly you know that that word holds weight, and so those weighted words become meaningful to the people that speak this language. So it put it to perspective for me, and I understand. So at that time, the church controlled everything, and people were a little bit tired of it, so they started using words in vain. Also, it probably explains why the church was empty. We also learned the difference between Quebec French and France French. I'm in Quebec. Oui, oui, oui. Oui, oui, oui. That video was taken in the morning, and this evening I'm learning that they don't say oui, they say ouais. So that was the experience on Airbnb. Very, very helpful in understanding the situation here in Quebec from an insider's view. So from the beginning of the tour in the morning, I've been noticing and counting all these flags, and I was wondering, why is there such like a huge pride for being a part of Quebec? Because Ontario, it's not that big of a deal. Like, you could probably even go your whole life, maybe that's an exaggeration, without even knowing how the flag looks like in Ontario. But this evening, it was much more insightful in helping me understand everything to do with the past and why it matters so much to people today, and it makes so much more sense why they care in the situation that's going on here. I think that if you're looking to see like insider views, then check out this experience, because you get to hear and ask your questions to insiders, and it's much more better, because we're always looking from the outside, and it makes sense why there were so little people, or few people, at the church this morning, because everybody apparently here is trying to distance themselves from anything associated with the church. And I had no idea. If you look back there, there's like Mount Royal at the back there, and there's like a cross on top and everything like that. So for me, even before I came, I always thought this was like a pretty Christian place. But the more you learn when you come. So that brings today's exploration to a close. it was very informative. It was historical. I learned about culture, I learned about people, and I'm excited. This is just one day, but it feels like 2 or 3 actually. So inshallah, we'll see more. So for these 2 experiences, I have some information about them down below. I really like Airbnb experiences, especially on day 1. And they're not telling me to say this because I'm just sharing it, because day 1 is when I feel most awkward about where I'm at, and it really helps to have something to look forward to, or with a guide or an activity, you know, just to break you into the place. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or have any feedback or comments, just feel free to do that. You can also like and subscribe, and if you want, you can also check out my blog. I will have more information up about Montreal soon.